Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, we will begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wash-shamsi wa duhaha wal qamari idha talaha والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بتقواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Inshallah, we'll move on to the lecture with our respected scholar, Sheikh Mahdi. Sheikh Mahdi requires no introduction in our community, as we have had the honor of benefiting from him multiple times. And alhamdulillah, we're fortunate that he'll be joining us for this holy month, for these 12 nights. So inshallah, without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Sheikh Mahdi to please begin the lecture with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Dear brothers and sisters, I begin by expressing my salams and my congratulations on the blessing of this month of Ramadan, that we have now experienced more than 2 weeks of it, and we are preparing for the Layali al-Qadr, which tonight is perhaps one of the first nights that it is observed, the night of the 19th. And also, of course, this is a night of great tragedy where the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam, the successor of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, is attacked and struck in the masjid by one of the Khawarij, the wretched Ibn Muljim. So we also want to express our sorrow and our condolence to Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam, especially the Imam of the time. And I'm also very honored to have this opportunity to spend these nights with you again. And I hope that inshallah in the roughly 2 weeks that we do have, we can use them to learn from teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. And especially I wanted to focus on one of the letters of Nahjul Balagha, letter 31, that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam is writing to one of his sons in the form of a will. And it's a will of, it's a behavioral will, one that the Imam is preparing his son, or, kind of orienting his son in the right way of looking at the world, approaching life, so that he'll be able to maintain that level of commitment towards Islam and living as a Muslim. And I think that's pertinent because we want to not only commemorate and celebrate the life of Imam Ali, but it's important for us to also use these lessons that the Imam has given us as guidelines, seriously use them as roadmaps for how we can organize our lives, and not just what we can share with our children in the form of instruction or maybe in the construction of our own moral or ethical or behavioral wills, but also what we should be kind of focusing on right now in times of the development of our children. And this is, of course, not restricted to any particular age group. It's advice that extends to all people and all ages, and I think all geographies too. So in most of the Nahj al-Balagha versions, this is letter number 31, written as a will to his son. And the letter can be divided into 30 smaller sections, right? I've divided into 30 small sections. And tonight we'll go through at least the first and probably the first two sections, and it's an introduction to who the author and who the recipient of the will is. So the Imam is introducing himself, and he's also introducing his son, his recipient. And then in the second section, the Imam explains why he's writing this letter. It's really important to kind of appreciate those two. Then you get into the sections where the Imam is giving directed exhortations. So my hope is, inshallah, every night, as we first read and study this letter, second, that we take these kind of bite-sized lessons away from what the Imam is telling us. And I want to keep it very simple, because though we have, an ocean of these, gems available to us, we observe from time to time that, sometimes we haven't even had proper readings of them, let alone detailed study. So I want to use these nights that we're together as an opportunity to just read collectively together. And you're welcome to bring your questions. We may not be able to take them live in the program, but you're welcome to be in communication with me, share them with me, so inshallah they can be incorporated in the presentations of the nights to come. And I hope we do have a forum where we can look at this letter with great detail and use that to kind of compare and juxtapose our efforts right now within our families and also on a community level. So let's dive right into the letter. The Imam begins by introducing himself. He states, "Min al-walid al-fan." The first kind of like statements that the Imam makes writing this letter, he said, this letter is written, or these exhortations are from a father who is shortly to die, or who realizes the mortality of life. So the first thing the Imam is kind of telling himself and telling his son, his audience, is that I want you to become comfortable with this notion of death and dying. And within our culture, I'm speaking about kind of like in a Western or American culture, but it may be true of other cultures. Talking about death, talking about the dead, dying, is an uncomfortable topic, and it's a social taboo. People become visibly and emotionally uncomfortable when they're discussing death. And even in my kind of my experiences working as a hospital chaplain providing spiritual support to families, many people are not ready for the experience of the death or the loss of a loved one. But what that does is make that moment all the more difficult. The Imam is trying to do here is trying to uncover really why death is such an uncomfortable discussion to have, and why it's important to normalize it. That death is, of course, a part of life, and that he's using it also to remind oneself that, of course, our life and our experiences are not restricted to those of the worldly life. So some of the reasons why ulama have drawn our attention to why death and discussion of death may be uncomfortable, one is because we may fear the outcome of our actions in the afterlife. Quran says in Surah Al-Baqarah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَعَلَيْهَا مَا اكْتَسَبَتْ. So whatever good it earns is for their own benefit, and whatever evil it incurs is to their own harm. Or again in Surah Al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يُنَبَّأُ الْإِنسَانُ يَوْمَئِذٍ بِمَا قَدَّمَ وَأَخَّرَ بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا. That day, humankind will be informed about what he or she had sent ahead and the legacy of what they had left behind. Indeed, humankind is a witness to himself. So what the Imam wants to do already with his child, and again, all of this, when I say the Imam is doing, we use it as encouragement of what we should be doing. The Imam is normalizing death for his son. And he's telling him already, though we may not talk about it frequently, I, as an individual, I'm going to die. As your father, I'm going to die. And your child, your son, your daughter, should be prepared for that reality. So that's one of the first takeaway points. Using this month and using this letter as an opportunity to become a little bit more comfortable with the notion of death and to try and normalize the idea of death within our families. And when we do that, only then can we begin to have some of these difficult conversations. Because the Imam is trying to have one of the difficult conversations that is kind of grounded on this notion that he is to die. So his son needs to take these exhortations seriously. So again, I'll move past this. There's a plethora of teachings within the tradition that speaks about the benefits of remembering death and how that helps drive good moral character. The Imam says, "Min al-wad al-fan," from a father who is shortly to die. Al-muqirr lil-zaman, whose time has passed by, who acknowledges the hardships, the realities of the time, who's getting old, another way of saying it. So again, he is acknowledging his own mortality, but the fact that he is aging and that he can't do some of the things that he previously was able to do. Again, this is a challenge for many of us who are aging. I mean, all of us are aging, but there comes certain times in our lives where we really feel the difference. I can't do the same things that I used to do yesterday. And it's difficult for us to make those adjustments. So again, the Imam is saying up front, I'm saying, al-muqirri liz-zaman, I'm accepting that. Al-mudbil al-umr. So saying here, again, the Imam is saying literally, a person who has turned away from life. Al-mudbil al-umr. He's come to the realization that much of what he aspired towards in life when he was young, those opportunities have passed. He needs to orient himself perhaps now towards the next chapter of his life. And that's why he's making, he's doing what he's doing right now. Again, in preparation for tomorrow, there are certain things that they say Islamically we're responsible to do. We should have a kind of like a legal document in the form of a will ready. So those people who survive us know how to manage some of the outstanding affairs when we die. They're entitled to that. We as individuals should not put them in a difficult position. If death will come, of course, for them to know what to do. But there are so many other things, and there's so many other things that we wish we can do in the last moments of our lives. So what's, I think, really key to remember is it's very risky trying to time death. So, well, I have time right now, so it's premature for me to do or say certain things. Again, the Imam is saying that no, I've come of an age that I feel like death is a lot more proximate, but still, mudbil al-umr, turned away from some of the ambitions that I have. There comes a certain point in a person's life that their priorities have to change. Al-mustaslim lid-dahr, and this is even a more powerful presentation. It says, a person who has submitted himself to the circumstances of the time or the calamities of the time. Mustaslim is like, imagine two people who are kind of in a struggle. They're wrestling. literally or symbolically, figuratively. And one is about to pin the other. And the one who is about to be pinned kind of puts up their hands and accepts defeat. They tap out. That's who mustaslim is. He's saying, I'm mustaslim lid-dar. I've accepted the fact that there are certain realities that are happening in the world. Again, the Imam is not trying to live in a state of denial. Again, state of denial sometimes comes when we find ourselves living in circumstances that are unideal and unwanted. One way to respond to that is just ignore it, to deny it. No, I'm not going to accept the fact that there is a crisis right now in my life, a crisis in the life of my family, my child, my spouse, my community. Ignoring the problem or denying the problem is obviously never going to resolve it. It's not healthy to do that. So Imam is saying, Al-mustaslim lid-dar. There are certain things that are out of my control, out of our control. What's important for us to remember is for us to act in accordance to our responsibilities. There are times where we try really our hardest, our best. It doesn't produce the result that we want or produce a result that we think is fair or right. And that may be true. But in this famous statement from Imam Khomeini, he says, we are responsible to do our obligation, our duty. Sometimes that leads to a favorable, a just, a correct outcome, sometimes not. But in accepting some of the realities of the time, we make adjustments accordingly. The Imam again is saying, if things were up to me, pretty much, divorced from the divine decree, I would have hoped things to be differently. But they are as they are, and God has willed them to be this way. So I'm accepting of that. And he says, after al-mustaslim lid-dahr, al-dhamil lid-dunya. Because of that, I reproach this lower plane of living. Dunya, of course, means that which is more proximate or that which is lower in status, in stature. So this type of life is not deserving of some of the accolades, the rewards, the love, the attachments that we give it. As-sakini masakin al-mawta. And because of that, I'm residing in the abode of the dead. وَالضَّاعِنِ عَنْهَا غَدًا. And I'm shortly going to join them. I'm going to vacate this world. So this is how the Imam is presenting himself to his son, to understand kind of the severity of what he's about to say, but also, again, to normalize that notion of death for his son. Now, how does he, as a writer, introduce the recipient? He says, this is written, إِلَى الْمَوْلُودِ الْمُؤَمِّلِ مَا لَا يُدْرَكُ. This is written to a son, a child, who yearns for something that is not to be achieved. So, as a younger person, of course, one of the keys to success in life is ambition, is hope. That's what drives a person to, accomplish great things. And especially in the youth, this quality is at its peak. But Imam is saying that ambition is a good thing, hope is a good thing. But what are the things that you're hoping for? What are the things that you're ambitious for? There are certain things that you hope for in life, mostly pertaining to the worldly affairs. And worldly affairs doesn't just mean material. It may even mean in the form of relationship. Maybe in the form of the experiences that you have with members of your family, spouse, relatives. There are ambitions there are hopes that you have. Some of these you won't achieve them. Don't let that discourage you. That's one way of looking at it. Another way is that this young person is so attracted to the possibilities of this life that they've become blinded by those hopes and those ambitions. And because of that, they need to be kind of checked on what are the realities of life. So it's gearing our ambitions are really important. And the Imam is trying to do that, the son, and he's teaching us to do that for ourselves and for our children. So we have to be wary again of what are we chasing? What dreams do we have? Are they superficial? Are they artificial? And what type of ambitions are being planted in the minds of our younger people? Right? Because younger people are incredibly impressionable. Not just what society is, but what we allow of those societal ambitions to find a place in the hearts and in the consciousness of our children. Right? So in society, what is deemed success and happiness, and it's what it's looking for. It's looking for those tangibles of wealth, of status, of power. But this life is full of hardship and difficulty too. And it's important to remember not to put all of our eggs in that one basket of trying to realize some of these worldly pursuits. It's good to aim high. It's good to try and excel at whatever it is that we do. But if some or one of those things don't come to fruition, that should not destroy our purpose and meaning in life. Right? So, إِلَى الْمَوْلُودِ الْمُؤَمِّلِ مَا لَا يُدْرَكْ, to a son who yearns for that which is not to be achieved. These are not all, I want to emphasize that the Imam's not just saying those like worldly things, meaning like artificial or un-Islamic. No, it's possible that this son may yearn for a beautiful daughter, and Allah grants and takes away again. So this son should be prepared for that reality and not kind of fall prey to sometimes the delusions that are satanic in at their root, that then becomes destructive to their faith and their ability to function in this world with all of its calamities and difficulties. So إِلَى الْمَوْلُودِ الْمُؤَمِّلِ مَا لَا يُدْرَكْ, to a son who yearns for that which is not to be achieved. السَّالِكِ السَّبِيلَ مَنْ قَدْ هَلَكَ, who is treading the path of those who have perished, who have died. So again, the reminder of death. Many people have traversed this path of life. Where are they now? The end of all people is the same, that they will depart this world and go to the next one. So remember that. Then he begins to share this quality, غَرَضِ الْأَسْقَامِ, who is the victim of ailments, وَرَهِينَةِ الْأَيَّامِ, and who is entangled in the worries of the day, وَرَمِيَّةِ الْمَصَائِبِ, and who is the target of hardships. So again, trying to remind his son that life is not always going to be about the good times. You will find yourself surrounded by difficult life circumstances. Don't let your sense of Iman, faith, Islam, your sense of purpose, meaning, your happiness, your integrity, all of these things be determined by only when things are going well. There's obviously much more to say about this, but I'll kind of move forward because I want us to at least read through the letter. Then the Imam gets to this point. وَعَبْدِ الدُّنْيَا وَتَاجِرِ الْغُرُورِ. This son who's receiving this letter is a slave of this world and a trader of deception. So when someone is in servitude to something or someone, it means that they usually trade their freedom, or they have to forfeit freedoms that they have. So there's a transaction here. So he's saying this younger person, this son, is in a world that is full of these deceptions, and if he allows himself, he will operate kind of within that market and be a trader of deception. Is what he yearns for, what he wants, there's no real value. And he's so consumed by trying to acquire these things, he fails to realize that those things that he ends up acquiring or is in pursuit of acquiring, those things are, in comparison, really valueless. So here again, a reflection of what it is, what those things in life are that we are enslaved to. So we have these artificial freedoms within even the society or the country that we live in. It's boasted as the land of the free. Aside from the fact that it has a history of slavery, chattel slavery, but many argue that slavery continues until today, but in modified forms. That we are really just kind of slaves of a system that gives us the illusion of choice, right? So in the form of democratic participation, political participation. It affords us what? It affords us the freedom of speech, but really it's the freedom of silence. You can say whatever you want, but there's always consequences. That there is supposedly equality for all people, but in reality is full of inequalities. That all people except a small minority get to enjoy this inequality. That literacy and being educated is not accessible to most people in its true sense, and even in its kind of worldly sense is still inaccessible. And the construction of a new form of kind of new age plantation in the form of the office. So Abdul Dunya, we are searching for that freedom in this month, because we know that these individuals, Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, these are free people. So we want that. What does it mean for us to be free and not to be a slave of this world, not to be a trader of deception? And we're yearning also for social justice too, and especially in the consciousness of this country and of the world, really, pursuit of social justice. Imam would say, how can you have social justice without personal freedom? If you haven't already liberated yourself from the chains of this world that you are really a slave to, how can you aspire towards achieving justice at a global level or at a social level? So it's really important to kind of remember this notion of where is it that our allegiances lie, and how are we kind of in relationship with the world? So this son is in a time in his life that is completely absorbed by these worldly pursuits. وَغَرِيمِ الْمَنَايَا, and a debtor of wishes. وَأَسِيرِ الْمَوْتِ, a prisoner of his mortality. وَحَلِيفِ الْهُمُومِ, an ally of the worries. وَقَرِينِ الْأَحْزَانِ, and a neighbor of grief. And all of those kind of same principles in preparing his son, reminding his son of all of that which is happening. Look, he says, حَلِيفِ الْهُمُومِ قَرِينِ الْأَحْزَانِ, ally of worries, a neighbor of grief. Sometimes we're neighbors with someone or something, but we fail to acknowledge them as our neighbor, the realities of what's happening in our neighbor's home. We're living in a globalized world. Sometimes we fail to realize the reality of what's happening in the world around us. So there's grief all around the world. We're surrounded by it, whether we know it or not. Imam is drawing the attention of his son to that. Listen, I know you want to try to live, you're in pursuit of this dream, this fantasy. It's not a bad thing, but wake up and realize that you are surrounded by so much destruction and grief and pain in the world. What should you do then? You shouldn't obviously become depressed. You shouldn't become, defeated. You should become inspired. You should be motivated to appreciate and then respond to it. The Imam is bringing to the consciousness of younger people, again, how many, not just parents, but educators, mentors are speaking to younger people in this language? Or is it really just, achieve your dreams? Again, not a bad thing, but if you develop tunnel vision and you are completely, negligent to what's happening in the world, you wake up one day and you're like, wow, yeah, I achieved all of these things, great, but I was surrounded by kind of like destruction, and I wasn't even concerned about it. That's a problem as far as the Imam is concerned. وَنُصُبِ الْآفَاتِ, a victim of distress. وَالصَّرِيعِ الشَّهَوَاتِ, who has been overpowered by his desires. And again, this is one of the things that we experience and we observe and hear over and over and over, especially for younger people, that they are really overpowered by the shahwa. And the shahwa, again, it's not like just a bad thing. It's a need that naturally exists in a person. They are drawn to it, but in ways that satisfies it, destructively, dangerously. So this son is overwhelmed and overpowered by these shahawat. It's almost like he's not even in control. She's not even in control. So again, there needs to be a support there that allows them to remain composed and in control, not allow the shahwa to overtake them and to inform the decisions that they're making in life. And again, this is a reality that I think we all appreciate, because we are living in a world, in a time, and in a place that preys on these shahwat. And frankly, they pervert them. They pervert them. They take advantage, I don't know, maybe they take advantage of the fact that there isn't an acceptable Islamic moral infrastructure that allows for the satisfaction of the shahawat. And in that absence, in that vacuum, they provide options, many options. All of them are destructed and perverted. So your child, a younger person, is looking for entertainment. It's their right. It's a human need to be entertained. But if you notice, almost all of the forms of entertainment that are provided as options, they all have some sort of perversion in it, right? Take even the example of something like sports. Sports seems, harmless. But what is the culture that surrounds sports? Notice, especially in this country, you have the game itself, fine. But there's a whole culture that surrounds it. What kind of behavior does a supporter of a basketball team or a football team exhibit, right? Generally drinking. Generally, they're out of control. They're partying a lot. They're just bombarded with all these advertisements. It's not like you just can't watch a basketball game or football game. You have to consume, advertisements left and right. What are these advertisements? Again, they're building a certain type of a culture. So Sari' al-Shahawat, and that's one really an innocuous example of so many other things that exist. Entertainment in the form of media, say watching movies or TV shows. What's really the dominant kind of themes there? Entertainment in the form of, let's say, like video games for younger and not so young people. For myself, belonging to the Nintendo generation, I still play games until today. Again, what are the dominant and prominent themes there? The cultures there. All of these are either willfully or maybe kind of unintentionally constructed in ways that create cultures, attitudes, personality, behaviors that are antithetical to an Islamic way of life. So the person becomes overpowered by them. وَالسَّرِيعِ الشَّهَوَاتِ. So drawing attention to that and trying to problem solve becomes really important. وَخَلِيفَةِ الْأَمْوَاتِ, and who is a successor of the dead. So this kind of concludes that first section where the Imam is just introducing himself, introducing his the recipient of the letter. We'll stop there because we're already out of time. And hopefully that was it was just a little taste for those of you who may not be as familiar or had previously read and, we're looking for an opportunity to re-engage. There's so much in this letter. It's so rich. Really, if we study this letter seriously, there is an endless potential of what we can extract and then use to model our behaviors, our programming, our approaches, our attitudes and infrastructure, I think it will help us appreciate a little bit more, kind of our situation right now, and really some good strategies of what we can do to collectively together try and address this issue of raising children, child rearing, and especially in these kind of circumstances. Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Just a few minutes as we recite the musibah of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam. This letter, again, is a letter that a father writes to his child. And on a night like this, where Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam was a guest at the house of his daughter. In riwayat, it's come that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam, in these different nights, in the month of Ramadan specifically, in the Kitab al-Irshad, it's narrated, لما دخل شهر رمضان كان أمير المؤمنين عليه الصلاة والسلام يتعشى ليلة عند الحسن وليلة عند الحسين وليلة عند عبد الله بن عباس. He would spend, one night in this month as a guest at the home of his children. But it's narrated that when he would go as a guest, the children are, of course, welcoming their father and they want to be good hosts. It says, وَكَانَ لَا يَزِيدُ عَلَى ثَلَاثِ لُقَمٍ. Like, imagine your father comes to your home, really excited. Father, like Imam Ali alayhi salam, he only had made 3 bites to eat. He's not eating much. What bothers the child? Is the food I had prepared, you didn't like it? Is there something else wrong? They would ask him about it. Why are you eating? And the Imam responds, يَأْتِينِي أَمْرُ اللَّهِ وَأَنَا خَمِيسٌ إِنَّمَا هِيَ لَيْلَةٌ أَوْ لَيْلَتَانِ. The Imam says, I already know that the divine decree, the divine affair is near. In a couple of nights, what was promised to me by the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, will happen. They say on that night that he was a guest of his beloved daughter. Kulthum goes and has this conversation with her father. That Imam Ali alayhi salam says to her, Ya bunayyati inni arani qalla ma asbahukum. قالت وكيف ذلك يا أبتاه. There doesn't seem to be many days left for me, my dearest Kulthum. Why do you say this, father? The Imam says, قال إني رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم في منامي. I saw the Prophet in my sleep, in my dreams, وهو يمسح الغبار عن وجهي. I can see that he is removing the dirt and the dust from my face. ويقول يا علي لا عليك قضيت ما عليك. Ali John, prepare yourself. The divine affair will come soon. They say on that night, in another tradition, أن أمير المؤمنين قد سهر تلك الليلة فأكثر الخروج والنظر إلى السماء. That the Imam would exit the house many times that night, looking to the sky, وهو يقول, saying, والله ما كذبت ولا كذبت وإنها الليلة التي وعدت فيها. That of course Allah, what was promised will occur. And indeed this is the night that your decree shall occur. فَلَمَّا طَلَعَ الْفَجْرُ شَدَّ إِزَارَهُ وَخَرَجَ. When the time for Fajr prayers came, the Imam prepared himself to go to the masjid. وَهُوَ يَقُولُ, it's narrated the Imam reciting these lines. اشدد حيازيمك للموت فإن الموت لاقيك ولا تجزع من الموت إذا حل بواديك كما أضحكت الدهر كذاك الدهر يبكيك. Just like Imam Ali alayhi salam in this letter is preparing his son for the reality of death, he himself is also doing that for his own self as he's taking these steps towards the masjid. Fasten your back firmly, Ya Ali, for death, for surely death will meet you. And when death comes to you, don't fear, don't scream. As the Imam is making his way out, the children asking Imam, is it possible for you not to go tonight? Even the geese, they say, in the home, impeding the path of the Imam, began to quack and make noise. The people tried to scare away these geese. The Imam says, leave them. يطردوهن فقال دعوهن فإنهن نواحه. They are lamenting, they're grieving, leave them. These are mourners tonight. As the Imam enters the masjid, praying his 2 rakah, going on the roof of the masjid, reciting adhan, awakening those who are asleep. One of them would be the one who strikes the blessed head of the Imam. As the Imam returns to the mihrab, engaging in his prayers, this accursed man, standing in prayer close to the Imam, yells out the slogan of those Khawarij, لله الحكم يا علي لا لك ولا لأصحابك. As the Imam is struck on the head, he cries out, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah, fustu rabbil Ka'bah. The children of Ali begin to hear the cries of the people, Wa Imama, Wa Sayyida, Wa Muhammada. The Imam wipes the blood gushing from his blessed head, strokes it on his beard, reciting these verses from the Quran. هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَصَدَقَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. This is what Allah and His Messenger promised us, and Allah and His Messenger were honest. The cries from the heavens can be heard, Jibreel crying, تهمدت والله أركان الهدى وانتمست والله أعلام التقى وانفصمت والله العروة الوثقى قتل ابن عم المصطفى قتل علي المرتضى قتله أشقى الأشقياء ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم إلهي بحق أمير المؤمنين عليه الصلاة والسلام وبحق أهل البيت عليهم الصلاة والسلام. يا الله 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 يا رحمن يا رحيم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك واكفنا يا قاضي الحاجات ويا كافي المهمات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك على كل شيء قدير. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you on these moments that we're preparing for the Maghrib Adhan and the Iftar to make us of the true Shia, the true followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam. We ask you that you protect us, to protect our children, to make us those who follow the teachings and the example of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. Oh Allah, we ask you to make us good followers and good Shia of the Imam of our time. May Allah hasten his reappearance, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم لا كتب أمير المؤمنين. आज ज़ैनब यतीम हो गई, आज ज़ैनब यतीम हो गई, आज ज़ैनब यतीम हो गई, आज ज़ैनब यतीम हो गई। उठ गया बाप का सर से साया, उठ गया बाप का सर से साया, آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی، گھر میں فرش عذاب بچھ گیا ہے، خانہ رب میں ماتم بپا ہے، سوگ میں ڈوبا گھر سیدہ کا، آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی، آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی، اٹھ رہا ہے جنازہ علی کا، ایک محشر کا عالم تھا برپا، سب کے ہونٹوں پہ تھا ایک نوحہ، آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی، آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی، رو رہے ہیں یہ محراب و منبر، کہہ رہے ہیں یہ جبریل رو کر، ابن ملجم نے یہ ظلم ڈھایا، آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی، آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی، عرش پر مصطفیٰ رو رہے ہیں، سب کے سب انبیاء رو رہے ہیں، ہے فرشتوں میں کوہرام برپا، آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی، آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی، کوئی کلثوم کو دے دلاسا، اور تڑپتی ہے غم سے ختیجہ، مولا باس کرتے ہیں نوحہ، آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی، آج زینب یتیم ہو گئی۔
زيارة of أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا صفوة الله، السلام عليك يا ولي الله، السلام عليك يا حجة الله، السلام عليك يا إمام الهدى، السلام عليك يا علم التقى، السلام عليك أيها الوصي البر التقي والنقي والوفي، السلام عليك يا أبا الحسن والحسين، السلام عليك يا عمود الدين، السلام عليك يا سيد الوصيين وأمين رب العالمين وديان يوم الدين وخير المؤمنين وسيد الصديقين وصفوة من سلالة النبيين وباب حكمة رب العالمين وخازن وحيه وعبة علمه وناصحة لأمة النبي والتالي لرسوله والمواسي له بنفسه والناطقة بحجته والداعي إلى شريعته والماضي على سنته، السلام عليك يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن أبي طالب ورحمة الله وبركاته، اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
الرحيم. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه، ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه، ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه، ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير، مع حاجة بي إليه عظيمة، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وصفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك على قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي، عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي. أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك، وأريتني من قدرتك، وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا، وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى، تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله ولا شبيه يشاكله ولا ظهير يعاضده. قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أنادي ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني. فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وعمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. وصل على صبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكتك المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله. مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به وانصره وانتصر به وانصره نصرا عزيزا وافتح له فتحا يسيرا واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، وأعزز به ذلتنا، وأغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وأعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا، وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله، وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله، وبضر تكشفه، ونصر تعزه، وسلطان حق تظهره، ورحمة منك تجللناها، وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صل على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Smarna is like very outgoing, compassionate. She has lot of friends and she always has a smiling face.
She is very smart girl. She was pretty good at playing piano. One day she was sitting on the dining table and doing her homework, and suddenly she kind of collapsed. To see how the nurses pushing her in this long hallway, it is one of the most difficult scenes for a dad. it could be the last time.